Welcome everyone to Grow Your Brain. This podcast would not be possible without our amazing sponsors, The Gathering. The Gathering is the award-winning brand festival hosted in the breathtaking Canadian Rockies. Home of the Brand Hall of Fame, The Gathering brings the world's boldest brands to an iconic stage to share the playbooks, provocations, and hard-won lessons behind building brands that last. This year, APG Canada members can save $250 on eligible passes to the Gathering Festival taking place on October 21st to the 24th in Banff, Alberta. Just grab your exclusive promo code inside your APG portal and go to thegatheringfestival.com to buy your passes. Oh, and if you're not an APG Canada member yet, this is your sign. Visit apgcanada.ca to join the largest strategist community in Canada. Now, let's get into the show. Okay, I'm joined by Claudia Aguirre. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pedro, for having me here. I'm very happy to be here in this amazing podcast that you have.
I'm so glad. I've been trying to have you here. I know we're new. The podcast is new, but you're like, when I was coming up with this idea, I imagined this conversation right from the start. We go way back. So you're somebody I highly respect and value, the friendship and perspective. So I'm so glad that you're able to make the time.
Thank you, Pedro. No, likewise.
So why don't we jump in for those people who don't know you? You are located here in Calgary, but you have an amazing story that led you to this point. Describe a little bit about your career to this point and give us a bit of a background of what's been, keeping up you at night and where you came from and what do you do?
Okay, well, let's put a check mark on what keeps me up at night is menopause, for sure.
Yeah, I can relate to that, but I'm sure lots of people can.
You're very lucky. Anyway, so I am from Mexico, as you well know, and I have been in this business of being a planner, strategist for 20 plus years. I started my career in Mexico and I worked for different firms like Leo Burnett, BML, FCB, etc., Cantor Group in many points in my life in different positions, always as a strategist in the US Hispanic market. I lived in Puerto Rico. Now I live in Canada. I don't know, like the weather, which one I like the most, but anyway, so it has been quite a ride. And I was, I think, in the top of my career. And Diego, my son, he was 3 years old. He came back home with a drawing from the daycare that had my husband and him holding hands by the house and me on a plane. And that is exactly what was happening. And this is going to take us to the conversation I think we're going to have later is when I saw that drawing, I was like, shit, he's right. He's 3 years old and he can read what is happening in our lives. And what was happening was that I was never home. I was always on a plane. I was living my life. I was learning from all these amazing strategists around the world in the big, big brands, like global brands and in different categories. But then I had to make a very tough decision and decide between my career or my family. And I, of course, picked my family. And I say, of course, because I don't know, like nobody, have you seen that ad from Coca-Cola that is like, your boss is not going to be holding your hand when you die? Like all that came to mind. And so we moved to Canada in the summer to Calgary and I loved it.
Receiving. You came in the summer.
Yeah. My husband, he's very tricky. He's very, very tricky. And we came and never looked back. But so I think that I had to reinvent my career and go from global brands to local brands, from huge budgets to no budget, from big businesses to startups. And so I found my niche because that is what we do, isn't it? Like we found the way, and we just keep on swimming and we just keep on doing things. And I opened my own consulting firm 10 years ago after spending quite some time in energy company and in some local agencies. But in the last 10 years, I have been a consultant working with different teams in different agencies in town and in the UK and in Mexico and so on research and branding, qualitative market research and branding, basically, with a little more interest or preference for civic causes, non-for-profits and sustainable brands.
Yeah.
That's in a nutshell who I am.
Yeah. No, we can spend the next hour unpacking that, if I'm being honest. So when you were starting up in your career in Mexico City, was the planning profession something new, or was it, because I know in like a lot of Latin America, planning came later. Creative obviously came first. Well, like in most places, but it really took a little longer to arrive in Latin America. Was that the case with you when you started?
Yes, it was absolutely the case. I was part of the first batch of strategists that came out from BML. At that time was JWT, J. Walter Thompson. And we were trained in the UK and in Latin America. And because we were that first batch. And it was the same at the same time, Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. I know it sounds like a joke, but it was that. And then it started permeating to other countries. And I do remember the first time I went to the 4A, the JChat conference in Boston. It was a long time ago. We were only around 100 planners. 100. And it was like, now we are 100. And now when you think about the 4As in New York every year, it's like 1,000. Like it is crazy. But those, like people from a client service and the creatives, they were the ones doing the strategy.
Yeah.
And then research was older. So Millward Brown and all those big houses, they were already established in Latin America. But yeah, it feels like when I compare that moment in time in Latin America and what is happening in Canada, it feels like that in Canada. Canada was not interesting enough for many years. It was almost like a copy paste from the States, which is very unfair for Canadians.
Yeah.
But now that we have more volume of people, I guess, and more diversity, I feel that resurgence of the planners is coming back.
Yeah. I love the comparison. Like, every time I talk about Brazil to people in Canada, I say that Brazil is what Canada it's Canada, but like 300 years later, in the sense that the population is 240 million. We've had the immigration like for centuries going, and basically we create this big mix of people, right? Like, hopefully Canada won't be in the same, corrupt political situation,
But they will be in the World Cup.
but they will be in the World
They
Cup,
will
correct?
be.
Maybe they'll be top 10. So maybe there's that. But, I find that fascinating because I think like for new planners like myself, like I'm sort of not new, but like I think, in my 30s, I think we often missed the life of the planner before digital, and we get to watch like Mad Men and we're like, wow, that was crazy, and but I hear stories, like of how this really was true. But when you're starting, like when you're that first batch of planners, right? Like you said, you were in Mexico, like, how do you know that what you're doing is right or wrong? Like, was there any sort of training for you guys, or you guys are learning as you went?
So there was a lot of training from very, very like the big wigs in planning in the UK and in America, in the States. So I was very fortunate to be like with the big voices that you hear out there. There was, I think I said this in my class with the APG, there was this head of strategy called Stephen King. And I thought it was the Stephen King for the longest time until I met him. And I was like, yeah, no, this is not that Stephen King. Anyway, but we were.
That's so true. I think everybody has the same thought, but nobody says it. It's like, is that
And he was
Stephen King?
copied and all this big with the big bosses and whatnot. And then I went to this training in Chile, in Santiago de Chile. And then there was the Stephen King, and I was ready to ask him like about like misery and the kids in the cornfields and all that. It was not. Anyway, but we learned from the best. From that madman generation, we learned from those.
Yeah.
And there were principles that they still apply, and they apply anywhere in the world. And I think that when I have to hire almost like the first batch of planners after my boss, who was the founder planner. She was Canadian, actually, Jennifer. And she, and then she hired me and my friend and from research and then it was like, okay, now you're a planner. And it's almost like they give you like this medal or this title and you're like, okay, what do we do? And the good thing is that because everything was very empirical and you were learning as you go, what I like is that we were not afraid of failure because there was no measure of what is right and what is wrong. And I think that lately, when I see strategists and I see client service people or whatnot, is that fear to fail.
Mm.
And if you're afraid and you're coming from a place of fear, you're never going to do anything. Forget about planning in your life. Like if you're coming from like, oh, what if I'm wrong? Oh, what if this doesn't work? Like, forget about it.
Yeah.
You have to dare to think differently, to ask questions that are uncomfortable, to manage uncertainty.
Yeah.
Because your life becomes this uncertainty that you're like, they are going to invest all this money. Holy shit. And here I am saying like, yes, this is the way to go. And you're like, fuck, it
Sign off.
better be the way to go because if not, they're going to fire me. But when, you always have those screeners that I love that are creative directors. Like when you're working with good creative directors, and I had the fortune to work with many famous Cannes people at caliber, they know when you're bullshitting and they know when you have something that they are like, that sounds interesting. You know when you are bullshitting someone and you're like writing the brief the night before and you're like, fuck, I have to finish this. I have to, and you're asking your partner and you're asking your dog and you're going for a walk. What the hell? And they can smell. Clients can smell bullshit. Your creative directors will probably, and this is not offensive, but probably you can make the client service people say like, okay, yes, because they have their heart and their mind somewhere else, which is, I just want this to be done.
Mhm.
It is different. But many client service people, you would be surprised how strategic and how amazing they are to get you into an insight or to call your bullshit too.
Yeah.
So anyway, at that time, just to finish the point is that was before digital, of course, as you well said, but you could still be sneaky if you wanted, and you could still do a brief on your desk and don't do the work. But that wouldn't fly. It doesn't fly. Like papers that are made on a desk, they don't fly, to be honest, unless you make a paper plane. So what we did was we went out. We went out to the streets. We went out to, we walked. I was giving a talk somewhere, I don't remember, at a University of Calgary the other day. And I was saying, just remember that everything that is in your computer is something that somebody else regurgitated in a website, in a Instagram or whatever. If you want something fresh, you have to put your boots and go out.
That is such a good point, Claudia. Like I most recently we did an ethnography. I was telling you about this in Mexico for a client, and the time that you spend like out there in the real world, seeing, talking to people, smelling the environment, touching the dirt, that cannot be. It's hard to measure that impact.
Exactly.
Right?
And if you get there, what happens is that you become this person that understands your brand and your category and the people more than anyone else. And it is dangerous even. Like I have had clients that they don't know their brands. So if you're being briefed by your client and your client doesn't know who their customers are, doesn't know their brand deeply, and doesn't know what they want, or their competitors, you're in big problems because you have to solve it all for them. Going back to those days, I remember I was working for this huge global confectionery brand at the time, and the clients was like, there was this conversation about increasing the price of one of these candies. And I remember that they were like, they didn't know their customer. They didn't know where those candies were being sold. And Brazil, Latin America, Mexico. They are not sold in a beautiful confectionery store in Ginza Street in Tokyo. No, they are sold. Candy is something that keeps people without eating throughout the day because they don't have enough food and they want to cope with hunger or with like cravings or so. So they are sold in the metro, like in subways and like, how do you say?
The street lights, I know that was like super
So we
common.
gave them, and so we gave the clients 200 pesos of that time. And we said, okay, now, tomorrow, we all are going to go and we're just going to do the same route that this waitress and this office person, manager, do in their daily day. And we did that. And we put them, all of them, that they have been playing golf for the last 5 years. We tell them, we have to meet at Metro Tasqueña, and we're going to go from there to this other place, and you're going to have to survive during the day with 200 pesos. And you have to eat, and you have to pay for your transportation, and you have to do all these other things. After that experience, they were like, we do need to do more research and more planning, and we don't know. Sorry for mocking the client. Like, they don't, probably they are retired at this point. So
They're probably retired, yes.
I can mock retired people. That's fine. So they were like, yeah, we don't know our clients. And how many times, Pedro, you have encountered clients, creatives, or many people in our industry that they don't know their brands, that they don't know their consumers. And they are just sitting in the front of the computer trying to find the answers from a screen.
That is very common. That is very common. It is the path of least resistance, is the most convenient path. But I think in this work that we do, convenience is your enemy.
It is.
You have to be inconvenient, sometimes to find the truth,
Exactly. And I just want to add something to that point of the first batch. I do remember one time I had to hire more people because now the clients, they were happy and they were like, oh, we want a planner in our account. And we were like, yes, of course you do, because now we're helping you to understand and to be sensible and to really generate better campaigns. So I started hiring people, and I remember I hired this woman that she was client service, but what she came to me and said, I do want to be a strategist. And I said, what do you have under your wing that can make you a strategist? And she said, I was a girl guide. And for me, that was it, because I wanted her for a children, like a consumer goods account for kids. And I knew that nobody else but someone that has the passion and the patience, I'm going to say, to be with kids and talk to kids and know how to talk to kids would be perfect for doing whatever type of research and insights and whatnot for them. And then I hired another guy that I was like in a coffee shop. And then there was this TV, in Mexico and in Brazil and everywhere. Like in cafeterias, they have TV because we love telenovelas and movies and World Cups and all that. And then I saw this guy, and he was a reporter on the streets. And he was like, Señora, what do you want? Da, 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 da. And he was interviewing people, and he was so natural. And he was like, so then I called the station and I invited him for an interview, and then I hired him. And then he was my successor in Puerto Rico and then in Chicago. And he was an amazing person.
What a story. Oh my God. Like, imagine that's how you get discovered, like you get introduced into the planning profession, like that way. I mean, that's unbelievable.
And so all the strategies I had were coming from different walks of life, but that is exactly what you want. You want diversity. You don't want a box of eggs. You want a candy store. You want everybody to be different because everybody was bringing a different perspective. And I think we're in that point in Canada that like trying to put an ad for hiring a new strategist and saying like, oh, you have to have experience as a strategist, maybe it's against what you really want. Maybe you have to go and find like someone that is on sales or someone that is baking cookies. I don't know, but someone that has that lateral thinking.
Yeah, I was actually the first episode of this podcast. I had PK Lawton here, and he's a sociologist, and we were talking about sociologists. That's what they do. They observe people. They do ethnography. They try to understand how people behave and connect with each other culturally. And I've always thought that a great strategist doesn't necessarily have to have a marketing degree or a business degree. In fact, some of the best strategists I've ever seen, they have English degrees, or they came from anthropology, sociology, or to like, honestly, I think in the early days, no degree at all. They were just misfits.
No,
that's found a way, right?
Exactly. I had a lot of misfits. Well, many of them, the ones that I'm telling you, probably not too much. But then I had this intern like more recently, and that he was like, I am a dropout of high school. Then I went back and I did a night school, but then I I was a dropout from university and I started studying carpentry and then I dropped out. And I'm like, okay, you're perfect. You understand different worlds and you're able to see different point of views of people. And that is also extremely important for us.
Yeah. So you spent, Claudia, did you start your career in research or did you start your career in something else?
I started my career in research, in market
In research.
research, in quant and qual, and I loved it. I fall in love with understanding human behavior, and this is, I think that the origin is Balzac, the author, because
Oh, yes,
he
okay,
was
yes.
one of my favorite authors when I was younger, and he did this series of books called La Comedia Humana, so the human comedy. Is that translated?
Yeah, the human comedy, yeah.
And I read, devoured all the French guys of that time. And I was like, I am an avid reader. And at that time, I wanted to study literature. And my dad came home and he was like, if you're not Gabriel Garcia Marquez or what is the name, Paulo Coelho or one of these big guys,
Paulo Coelho, yeah.
where you're gonna starve. And I am like, okay. So basically he didn't have faith on me on being a good writer. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So he said, like, why don't you study something else and you're still gonna love books are gonna be around you and whatnot. So anyway, so long story short, I did start on research and I do remember that I have a type of dyslexia, so numbers are not my friends. To the point that I missed, I missed the date when I married. So I booked the peace officer for one day and then I invited people to another day. So then I had to recall them and say like, come a day earlier because of course I missed the date. So I have dyslexia. So numbers are not my forte, but then words are. I love seeing people behaviors. I remember the first time I was in a gestional chamber in focus groups and I was an observer at the time. I was like, this is the most amazing thing on earth. After microwaves and probably, I don't know, like ballet parking, this is the best thing ever. So anyway, so I fall in love on that. So I educated myself as much as possible on sociology, on psychology, on human behavior, on patterns of behaving. And an observation has always been, for me, the key to find great insights and great things. I think that we as a strategist, our job is to find elements or territories or opportunities for the creatives to do their work. So I love that idea of finding things for them. And I have always said this, they are my client number one. My clients are the creative teams. I don't care. I am their servant. I don't care. Well, I do care about the client and you do care about the other people, but if you have that connection with a creative director or a creative team where there's respect, where there is love for the brand and for the project, where there is the willingness to put more hours and you're just helping them. What if this, what if this, what if this, and look at what I found. That is where I find my joy.
I love that. Yeah, I've the best compliment that a strategist can ever receive is an invitation from the creative to quote unquote bounce some ideas off of you. It's like, okay, it's I built the trust is there, like they value the perspective and vice versa. It's best possible case scenario. But Claudia, you mentioned something about observations leading to insights, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. And how do you see the difference between an observation and an insight? Because I think we love in this industry to deconstruct things, and the insight is dead or the insight is not real or whatever. Like I think there is a camp of people that are anti-insight. There is a camp of people that are more towards like writing insightful briefs as opposed to a brief with an insight per se. But you talked about finding insights through observation. Like, tell me a little bit about that. How do you see those two working together?
Yeah. So for me is when you are I want to take what you just said about creatives. When they invite you to bounce ideas, you're like, yes, I got it. Like they don't even know, they don't have an idea. Like they don't even imagine how rewarding is for us when they say those words. And you were like that you go to the meeting or whatever you are, a coffee shop or whatnot. And you're like, oh, this is great. They are asking me. But anyway, and I think that the opposite effect is when people go into technicalities. So when there is no idea, I have found that is when everybody's like, well, that is that an insight or is that a fact? Is that a truth or is that a UFO? Who cares? Who cares? As long as there is an idea there, then we can box it. So we are happy with our little boxes. It doesn't matter. If we don't have an idea, the first sign in a conversation is, guys, we're getting into technicalities. We don't have an idea. We don't have an insight. We don't have a way. And many times the insight is not even coming from people. The insight is like, hey, have you checked all the competitors and what they are doing? And we need to do this or that based on that. And that is the insight. As simple as that. And you see many campaigns that they touch people because the competitors are not really connecting with people. But when we try to put it in boxes and become technical, that is when we're losing the magic in my experience. Now, observation for me is very important, especially in these times where people, the only thing they are observing is this.
The phone.
The phone. So it is ridiculous. I was in University of Calgary. I go to my Pilates class. I am the oldest one, just to say that. But all the girls there, all the guys that I see on the street, even like everybody is on their phones. And that, as you know, and we're not going to dwell on that today, probably, unless you tell me that we're going to dwell on that, is taking us to doomsland.
Yes.
In many ways, like health, mental health. We all know. And that has made observation very scarce. So people, including us, strategists, we're observing less. We're not really looking at what are people doing. Like, that's why we have all these campaigns of like, if you see something, like tell something, or like all these campaigns, like, because people are not observing. Maybe they might be watching, looking. Observation is a different verb. And there's a why that is that. And observation is when you have a question that you want to discard, like solve, or you want to discard because it's going to take you to another question that is more interesting. And I have an example. So I was working for this global beverages and liquors, alcohol and liquors brand. And we had this very lame product for that haven't had campaigns. Like, it was like the ugly duck of the company. And they were like, okay, we're ready to invest a little bit of money on this brand and make it happen. The magic happened in Latin America, and it has a very narrow target market, but it could be. So this is it was like cocktail kind of mix, like imagine piña colada or strawberry daiquiris, like those type of that are super sweet and are for the people who love those were young, like young women, professional young women, but we didn't know how to position it.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, so then the batch and I, like now they are called the batch of the strategy. We went out.
The first batch.
I don't remember if it was the first batch, but one batch. I have had many batches now at this point. Like, they are like old people now. My batch is like, oh my God, they were trainees when I met them. Now they are batches, like on senior batches. Anyway, so we went for drinks. And we went to different bars and to observe. And we were like, oh no, nobody's asking for these drinks and whatnot. And we were observing, but observing too hard without a question. That doesn't help. That is like being in an airport. It's like you're just seeing people pass. That doesn't work. You have to have a question. So anyway, so then someone from the batch said, I'm going to go to the washroom. So then all the women, this is very Latino, we all go together to the washroom. I don't know why. Maybe we need more cosmetics in our faces than anybody else. And anyway, here we go. So here we are. And then we said, okay, why don't we wait here? Because then a group of women, like our audience, came in and they were chatting about men and about their bras and about their nail polish and about like anything that you can imagine. But in particular, they were talking about men and if they like this guy and if they want to go out with this other guy and all that. And we're like, okay. And they were giggling, and somehow at some point, there was this moment that you have experienced when you were like, yes, this is it. And we came out from there and we went back to our table and told the guys, like, you are not going to believe it, but we found the angle in the bathroom. And the angle was like, yeah, so these ladies, they talk, the way they were talking about men. And I want to point, the way they were talking about men was such that it reflected that they were a little bit shy and prudish, that they were not this like, hey, let me show you no. They were not those adventurous women. They were more like discreet, imagine like Hallmark women. Like they would write notes and they were very like sparkly pink women, let's say. And then we're talking about how they talk about men. And somebody said, you know what? We have to position this brand as the stripper that comes to a bachelor.
Like the male stripper that goes to the bachelorette.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we took that thought and we were like, yes, that is that. Of course, we didn't tell the client that it was like a stripper going to a party. He would have accepted that because they were great clients. Anyway, but we then talked to the creatives. There was something there. The stripper, all these super sweet beverages, very Hallmark women. There was something there. Boom, magic happened. It came from observation, bad observation first. Second iteration of observation, it was very good in the washroom. And I would say observation includes listening, of course. And then you tell me, what is the insight? What is the idea? It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
There was an idea there that then we were able to write a beautiful brief. But before writing the brief, this is something that I always tell strategists, go and talk to the creatives, because if they feel that there's nothing there, it doesn't matter that you write the brief with like 10 different colors and you put flowers in there. They're not going to like it.
No.
So agree with them and then go write the brief and then impress them.
I love that story because I think strategists, we often are, we know that we eventually have to write the insight. Yes. And that freezes us, right? Because it's like, oh my God, I need to now craft this perfect insight, But your example, it's like, is an example of, let's say if that was the brief, like literally that story could be the brief, right? And it's like, it is so insightful.
Yes.
And now you have a jumping off point. Like you have a bunch of great observations that have tensions and they're loaded with meaning. And like, I want to talk about this as well. Vulnerabilities of, you have to be able to be courageous enough to talk about those things that maybe you're nervous to talk in public, right? You often talk about this. Actually, your APG class was about this, about vulnerability, which I love. And this conversation even, right? It's like this, the male stripper of, liquor. It's like, you have to be able to develop this sort of rapport with your batch, your group, to be able to have those conversations. Because vulnerability is important. You have to talk about things that may be taboo.
Yeah, exactly.
And that takes courage. It takes like a leap of faith that the other person is not going to judge you for it, but you're in service of the work, in service of the audience, consumer, whatever it may be. That's the most human thing there is.
There is the most human thing there is, because this also is how we as humans, we share. If you don't share, it's very difficult that you want to share something with me. So that is a principle of being vulnerable. It doesn't mean that you're going to be crying in a meeting room. No, being vulnerable is daring to share about something about your life and your human being. So people are like, okay, I got this from Claudia. Now I want to share with Claudia.
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember when I was working for this energy company, we did a series of open houses, and I was in consumer engagement, not consumer, stakeholder engagement team. And we did tons of open houses. And I am here with farmers in Manitoba. All of this with farmers in Manitoba. So imagine the accent, the skin, the everything makeup that encompasses myself. And I was having quite a success because I was open. I was like, you know what? And this is true. You have to be very true. My grandpa was a farmer in Mexico. My grandpa had field and what he cultivated was cantaloupe.
in Jalisco, right? You said
in Jalisco.
in Jalisco, yeah.
And so anyway, so I told one of the farmers that story in this place in Manitoba where I was, and he was like, "Oh, I never thought how does those cantaloupes grow?" And I was telling him, "Well, they go in chains like zucchini." So I was trying to explain that, and he was interested, and he was like, "Oh, so then you understand?" So he understood that I understood then, and that I had something in my personal life that had a connection with their life. And from there, the rest was history because it was a different take that if I had come and it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak the language very well. I am Señorita Mexico. Explain me about your farm." And like, it was like, "Who are you?"
Yeah, it puts a barrier between you and them, you know.
Yes. So people are people.
Yep.
Just
The lowest common denominator, right, is our humanity. I always like to remind myself that whenever you go talk to, a big executive, or if you're in front of a stage, in front of an audience on the stage, we all are humans before our titles, before whatever it is that we do. We all come from the womb. We all experience similar things growing up, right? And we can relate at that level. And I think, to your point, the way you related to that farmer was like a very human level.
Yeah. And I think that is, I would love that someone comes and trains our strategists on being vulnerable, on being human. It's incredible that, for example, I work with this agency in town and I work with one of their client service person. We have been working together for a year. I haven't been able to crack her. And that is like now a personal thing.
Hard.
Like I am like, but I don't know nothing about her life. Even though when I have put myself on a tray, and she has just gave me like 2 little treats. So I know 2 things about her life. Most people, they open right away and it's good. But I think it is a generation thing.
Could be.
That they feel that they are very vulnerable because of social media, which is a different vulnerability completely, rather than being human, as you will say.
Yeah. It's performative. I think social media is performative.
It's performative, and they live in the performative persona, and they forget about what they are really thinking and really doing. I was asking one person the other day in a conversation, and I was like, "But why you didn't tell your best friend about this thing that was happening to you?" And she was like, "Oh no, I didn't want to bother her." And I'm like, wow. I didn't say anything bad, of course, but then I thought that is a complete different take of our generation, probably in Canada compared to Mexico as well, because it's like people don't want to say what they feel. They don't want to say what they do. They don't want to say anything because they feel they are bothering the others. They are taking their time. And because they are very respectful, they don't want to do that. But that is taking the social fabric away.
Yep. And you've worked across, the Caribbean, lots of countries in Latin America, the US, Canada,
Europe.
And Europe, and you probably have observed differences in how people review themselves, to others. And do you see because I know Latin Americans were very intense and warm. We open up really fast. Have you seen that being almost like an advantage to strategists that come from an environment like that? And also, I mean, obviously that you don't need to be born this way. Like you can learn to be like that, but do you see that skill or behavior as an advantage?
I would say yes and no, because the thing with Latin America is that we have a politeness bias. You're going to find different biases depending on the geographies where you are and depending on the group of people that you're investigating.
Totally. It's really difficult to generalize an entire continent.
Exactly. But there are biases that are part of the culture. So that politeness bias is very much in Latin America, trying to not discomfort people and trying to say that you like things when you really don't like that. So I think that for strategists, it's important to understand what are the biases of the culture and what are their own biases as well. And understand people ask the second question and ask the third question and ask the question. But you need to give, to be vulnerable and give to get there. For me, it was challenging in Puerto Rico because I was working for the Caribbean and for the US. And what happens there is that for the Hispanic market was that you have people from different generations with different layers of culture and with two languages, for example, or even three languages, but mainly two, English and Spanish or English and French. And what happens is that sometimes knowing another language helps you. So I had these interviews with women and we were talking about a soap. I cannot reveal what soap, but it's a global. And it was like a soap, okay? And skincare. And it was when I started noticing that they revealed their secrets because this was a brand that wanted to position itself as a sensual brand, almost like instead of a perfume, it would be the scent of the soap covering that sensuality for women. And when I knew I was getting in deep is when they switched to Spanish. So they started talking in English. Yes, and I like this and I like that. Da, 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 da. And I was like, okay, but tell me about your husband. And then here we are talking about husbands. And of course I'm sharing and I'm saying like, oh yeah, my husband, I hate when he does this, when he does that. And we're talking about husbands. And then I was like, okay, tell me about bedtime. And that is when they're like, oh, boom. And I started noticing they were switching to Spanish because that was their mother tongue. And that was way more emotional, what the topic, than what they were getting, what I was getting in the first questions in English.
Yep.
So
that's fascinating.
Canada has the virtue and disgrace because it's also with us as people, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is our virtue is our disgrace as well.
Totally.
But we have this politeness embedded, like all this sorry culture, like apologetic culture. And even there are like provinces in Canada where when you say I'm sorry, there is no punishment of like, that doesn't mean that you actually
are guilty.
Are guilty.
Yeah.
And imagine a country that has to put that in the law.
Yeah. Says something about, our apologetic nature. Yeah.
And our apologetic nature. Anything a part comes from the UK, part comes from, I don't know where it comes from, that we don't want to bother, that we don't want to be distract or be intrusive and all that. And that makes it very difficult to unlock, in my case, as a strategist. Very difficult because it was only after some time that I learned that people will tell you something, but if you keep on digging, they will really tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But only if there is no offense, only if there is, because they have a lot of screeners to go through.
Yeah. You know what I found, Claudia, is I totally agree with the language comment because it's, my wife learned Portuguese and it's funny because when you learn a new language, you're not just learning a new language. You're learning a new way of thinking. It's almost like you develop a new personality, And so yeah, like whenever we go to Brazil and she starts speaking Portuguese to people, like when she switches from English to Portuguese, people open up immediately, right? And I think that the situation in Canada it's fascinating because yes, we all speak English, with the exception of some parts of Quebec. But what I found that how you connect is I've been to the town where you're from, or I've visited your province, or I've lived there. It's, my goodness, that's like saying I speak your language because of our cultures. It's like a tapestry of cultures in Canada, or localized behaviors that are so different, like a person from the island in BC versus somebody from southern Alberta, or somebody from central Saskatchewan, or if you're from the GTA or the Maritimes. If you've been to those places, you get it. You get why they behave a certain way, talk a certain way, and so to me, that's been the language that I found here,
Excellent.
Hey, I've been to your town,
Yeah, that is an excellent insight, for example. It is
Yeah.
that connection, that vulnerability, that moment where you're saying, "Oh, I have been and I saw these." For example, I saw that your beer is whatever beer, or that you have a lot of potato fields there. Like, oh, tell me more about that. But then you are
Yeah.
giving something to get
Yeah.
something else.
It's really what you're trying to do is like it's to lay down a bridge, between the two worlds. And that bridge could be language. I think without the language you don't have a bridge at all, right? But like that bridge can be better if you have the language and you understand where they're from, and you kind of keep building upon that. But
Mhm.
to your point, yeah, if the persons have to translate everything in their minds to talk back, you lose so much in that translation. And I mean, I've noticed that even when I was in Mexico doing that study. Thankfully, I can, have a little bit of Spanish that I can speak, but I never wanted them to speak English to me. I wanted to really hear what they had to say in their mother tongue.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is the freshest one, and I think that those are the type of conversations that I would encourage the young batches of brand strategists to really dare to do that, because I see them everywhere, like all these young generations that I work with, that I relate to, and they spend too much time on their phones, and they spend too much time, a lot of time in their own egotistic world. Many of them, I am not judging, but many of them, it's like how am I going to look, how I am going to show, in this persona that you were talking about, in the social media performative persona. And if you spend a lot of time in the performative persona and you are not Kim Kardashian, then you have to find a way to go back to the regular human being, because that is where you're going to find more money.
Exactly. It all comes down to that at the end of the day, right?
Like, you have to work at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Got to pay the bills. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I think that, these, all of these examples that you've given today came from being out there in person, right? Is like I like to say, marketing and advertising is a contact sport. You have to be out there and you have to rub shoulders with people and you have to talk and you have to feel uncomfortable, because that's how you overhear a conversation in the bathroom that might unlock millions of dollars of growth for, a drink brand, right? Or, you start talking about bedtime with women, about soap, right? So like these sorts of things don't happen behind a computer screen. And
Never.
so we've obviously have been led down this path over the past, 20 years of more and more being behind our screens.
Mhm.
And now, we have AI. I know I have to bring it up. I have to bring
Yes,
up AI.
please.
How do you see that making the situation worse or better or the same? Like, how do you interpret the insertion of this crazy technology into what we do?
I think it depends on how we use it. I think that yesterday, actually, I work with this firm in the UK, in London, and they sent me this agreement on AI, exactly on the use of AI. So reflecting over it, I think it is very right on how do we use AI. It's going to be your doomsland, or it can be amazing for your career. So when I started, like when I started last century working for the batch and like all that, I remember spending 80% of my time doing shit that was, at the end of the day, it was like going to give me, like, imagine like in a saffron field, like I was like going flower by flower, getting the saffron or saffron.
Saffron, yeah, yeah. It was just low return on investment
My
activities.
goodness, I was doing slides on Harvard graphics. You were not born, and I was already doing stuff. Anyway, and it was traumatizing, literally, to create a presentation, to get to the point, to understand consumers. Da, 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 da. So all that 80% with the came of AI, it has gone completely. I don't have to summarize things in 5 days. I don't have to like do the old fashioned things of how do you do transcripts. Imagine transcripts. Oh my God. I
Yeah,
good. PSTD when I say those words, or PTSD or whatever.
yeah,
My
yeah.
dyslexia. I never. Anyway. So, but now The thing is that it's very tempting for younger people, especially, I think, because they haven't tried the other ways, to say like, okay, AI, I just put this input and then it will tell me the answer. And the problem, and this is a Harvard Review article that I want to share with you about how AI is boosting individual creativity, but it is putting all of us in, I'm going to tell you what it is. They are putting all of us in almost like the same channel of the type of ideas that we're getting. It's almost like
almost like a regression to the mean. Everybody's coming back to the average, right?
it
It's pulling
is.
everybody to the same point.
No, it is. Okay, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it says. It says AI boost, and it's not Harvard. It's this Doshi and Hauser. Like I'm gonna send you. It's Science Advance. It's a magazine, and it says AI boosts individual creative output, but converges everyone's outputs toward the same handful of ideas. So it's almost like, of course, when you are chatting with AI, you can get some ideas, even though when it's a little bit regurgitating because it's you talking to the you that is in the algorithm, whatever, a little bit. But then if everybody else is converging to the same ideas, it's almost like we're a school of tuna, that we're going to the same ways.
Yeah.
And we're missing all that is in other places. So my point on AI is, yes, let's use it. Let's enjoy the beauties of it, of summarizing, like doing the work that it is not going to be fruitful, a good use of your time. So then you can save time doing that and you can go put your boots on and go to the streets and find your real insight.
Love that. Love that. It's almost like AI, AI doesn't have an opinion, right? And so if you push back on AI, the AI responds, sorry, you're right. And so it doesn't have any conviction,
Exactly.
doesn't have an opinion. And so we can help you like do some grunt work, but in the end of the day, you, the person, need to develop an opinion and a position about a topic or a consumer or, or a problem. And you do that by going out there.
Yeah. And I just want to tell you something before we go. I saw this article on another paper that says that Americans are now way more afraid of sharing their opinions about anything more than in any time before.
Wow.
Because of all the political situation, how the world is unfolding, people are retrieving themselves from saying what they really think, which is, if it happens in America, it will happen here. And like, it's going to happen to us, or it's happening to us. So that is concerning. And I just want to
It's basically making us less vulnerable.
Exactly.
Right? The risk is higher, it seems.
Because people are afraid to share because they don't know if they are going to get like social media blasts, or they are going to be canceled, or they are going to be throw eggs on the street. Like, they don't know. So they are not daring to say. So that it brings us in our industry, like the bar is higher, and you're not going to be able to do it with AI only. AI is going to help you. It's going to give you some foundation, but you have to do the work.
Yeah. You have to do the work.
Have to do the work.
I love that. Well, on that note, Claudia, I mean, thank you so much. Like your thoughts, your stories, your insights and observations. I mean, just so much value. I really appreciate you making the time. And I just feel so lucky that I get to, call you up and hear your stories whenever you pick up, because you're just an incredible human being. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pedro. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.